Hi, I'm Harry Rock, and welcome to another edition of Westfield Council on Aging Presents. This is a collaborative effort between Tina Gorman, Executive Director of the Westfield Senior Center, and Pete Coles, who is the program producer for WCPC Westfield Cable Channel 15. Our topic today is text to 911. And my guest is Nina Barsh, who is the dispatch administrator for the Westfield Public Safety. We will be discussing the role of emergency dispatch in Westfield and what happens in emergencies when you dial 911 for help. We'll also be sharing tips for how to make your home more accessible and helpful to emergency responders. So Tina Gorman on my mind. Nina, so nice to have you on the show. I got to know you through the Westfield 350 when I would attend the emergency management meetings. Is that what it was I was going to?
The local emergency planning committee meetings. Yes.
Yeah, and I was really fascinated because I recognized that I was one of the things that could create emergencies potentially. Fortunately, we didn't have any for all of you, but really got to know all those people and got to know you through that. So for the purpose of our viewers, can you just describe your role and what your primary responsibilities are for the Westfield Public Safety?
Absolutely. I just want to first say thank you for having me on, and thank you to Tina for suggesting it. I think this is a great opportunity to educate the public about 911 and public safety in general. So I would love to explain my roles and responsibilities, although they're not as exciting as the dispatchers who work for me. But I do manage a department of 10 full-time emergency 911 dispatchers. I have 2 part-time dispatchers on staff currently. And so, like I said, my roles and responsibilities are to manage the department. I go to a lot of boring meetings. I do a lot of boring paperwork, but the dispatchers are really, they have the most important job in here. So I'll explain that a little bit. So like their title says, they are emergency dispatchers who answer 911 calls for the whole city of Westfield. After they take the 911 call and they do a great job at call taking, they ask a series of questions. They figure out what the emergency is and where the emergency is. They will then send responders to that emergency. So their job mostly is to call take, dispatch over the radio emergency responders to the scene, and also to prioritize their tasks. So at any given time, we could have multiple emergencies going on. So one of their biggest responsibilities is to prioritize those things. They also have to multitask. They also monitor several different systems within the dispatch center that tell us things like fire alarms, closed circuit TVs that are cameras, let's say, out on the green or on the bridges, some at the schools. Another thing that they do is they run plates and licenses for drivers. They give that back to the police officers, so we know that who the police officers are dealing with. I would say one of the most important things they do also is keep our responders safe by monitoring the radio. And anytime the responders are out on a scene, they're listening for anything that could cause harm to them, and they're sending them backup if they need to.
Where is your office actually located?
So a lot of people think that because if they're calling 911 or they're calling the dispatch center and they need a police officer, they think they're reaching the police station, or they think they're reaching a police officer. A lot of times if they're calling the fire department, they would think the same thing, that they're reaching the fire department. We actually are a standalone dispatch center that is on the north side of the city. We are connected to the technology center on Appermont Way. We are right to the right of Barnes Airport and directly across the street from the animal shelter in Westfield. So we are a standalone dispatch center. We don't have physical contact with our responders and their departments, but we do communication-wise speak with them all day long.
That is fascinating because I agree. I was of the mindset that if I dialed, which I've never had to do actually, but if I had to dial 911, that I was getting directly to the police station or the fire station. So you're not, you're actually going to a separate building. So I think you just answered my question, is that you are all encompassing. You're dispatching both for police and fire. Do I have
We
that
are.
correct?
Yes, yep, we are. So I will tell you, I think,
And ambulance.
yep, and ambulance as well. So any of the emergency responders in Westfield, we are the ones that dispatch them. We were connected to the police department and dispatching out of their what they call their desk officer area now. The dispatch center was there about 12 years ago, 10 years ago. So I started working here about 3 years ago. So this standalone center was developed before I started. But the dispatchers were dispatching out of the police department. They combined to start dispatching not only police, but for fire and ambulance as well. And then they realized that once they combined, and now we're sending all emergency responses, that it would be best to start their own department. So that's what they did. And we moved away from having police officers and firefighters answering the emergency calls and dispatching over the radio to start developing dispatching as an actual career where civilians were signing up, applying, and now filling that role.
It's really interesting. And it makes so much sense. So I think what's important for people to realize is if they dial 911, they think they're getting a police officer. They're not. They're getting a civilian who's getting the information and then dispatching that to the police. So let's take that as a case. If someone has, I'm trying to think of an emergency, they see somebody fall on the ground, and
Yep.
so they want to call to get an ambulance. They're dialing 911. That is going to you, and then you hear the nature of the call. And that's what then triggers you to know, are you immediately dispatching police and fire together all the time? Or is it just one or the other?
Yep. So it depends on what the emergency is or what is happening there that we would need to, we would determine what we would need to send. So take your scenario, for instance. If we receive a 911 call and someone says, I just saw someone drop on the ground. Maybe they were clutching their chest beforehand, or they're just now laying motionless on the ground. If they call 911 from inside of Westfield, they're going to reach my dispatch center. The dispatchers will, number one, ask what the address is that where the emergency is located, so they know where to send. Because if that phone were to disconnect or the person were to become themselves unable to speak to the dispatcher, at least we have a location. So we'll send everybody at that point to figure out what's going on there. So address is number one that the dispatchers will always ask, and then they're going to ask what exactly is happening. And so we determine from what is happening was what we send to that. So if it's a medical call, the dispatchers will actually go through a series of questions that we have to become certified in. It's a protocol system that gives us standardized questions and instructions to ask and to give all of the callers that call in for an ambulance. And a lot of the questions are geared exactly to what's happening. So someone calls in and says that there's that someone's having chest pain. We ask their age, we ask if they're awake and breathing, if they're having difficulty breathing, if they have a cardiac history, ask if they've taken any drugs or medications in the past 12 hours. And all of this stuff is that we're asking, and the information that we're gathering is going to give us a better idea of what's happening and who to send. So in an instance like that, if someone has cardiac history and they're calling about chest pain, we know that it's probably a cardiac event in which we would send an ambulance and possibly a fire engine, because the personnel who staff the fire engine will actually give extra hands for care on scene for the ambulance. They can open doors, they can carry equipment. So even though you see a fire engine show up for a medical call, it doesn't mean that they're there because there's any type of fire hazard. But they're helping the ambulance personnel and the medics. There's other medicals that we would just send an ambulance for. If someone's complaining of, severe abdominal pain, they probably won't need some extra hands. We'll send the two paramedics on the ambulance, and that will be that. Or let's say if there is a traffic accident, we would send probably 2 police officers to handle the nature of the accident, to investigate, to handle the traffic on scene, and also an ambulance if there's injuries, and a fire truck if there's, let's say, fluids on the ground or airbag deployment. So depending on what is happening, there's a reason why the dispatchers ask so many questions. It's because we need to figure out the correct help to send.
That is fascinating, Nina. So the dispatcher really has a lot of problem solving to do under a stressful situation of trying to, and they're not there and they're not on the scene, but they're trying to figure out what's happening on the scene and what you need for resources there. So they're making the call on how much equipment and what you have for people power going out to that. That's
Absolutely.
I went online yesterday because I said, I don't know anything about dispatchers. Pete Coles,
Not a lot of people
everything.
do.
I know everything I know about dispatching is what I've learned from Pete Coles, our producer at
Yes.
WCPC Westfield Cable Channel 15, because he talks about it all the time, and I know that he still keeps his hand in the field a little bit. So I went online and I was looking it up yesterday, and I found a page that talked about dispatcher skills. So I'm just going to read these off, and I think you'll see if you agree with them.
Okay.
So the top of the list was decision making, communication skills, compassion, ability to multitask, teamwork, emotional control, technological skills, and organization.
Yep. All of those things and more.
And more, I'm
and
sure.
More.
So
yeah, I would say that's at the top of when I'm looking to hire a new person to come into the center and fill the role of a dispatcher. Those are absolutely all the things that I look for. And it's not easy to find somebody who has all of those skills. Now, I can tell you that I can train somebody for a lot of those skills, and I can help them hone the skills that they're bringing in to make them better at what they're doing. But things like multitasking, you can't really train that. I've read multiple studies that show multitasking is just not something that a human brain can do. And it's not just multitasking like a mom or a dad would do in the kitchen, where they're talking to their kids and cooking dinner and possibly answering a text message all at the same time, but there actually have to be listening simultaneously to certain things. So currently I actually here right now, I'm sitting in my office. The dispatch center is right outside my door. I can hear the tones going off multiple times in a row, which means that there's numerous things happening in the dispatch center. That dispatcher is sitting in the seat. They have to listen to a 911 caller, possibly someone calling on the business line to ask a question, and they have to be listening to all the radio channels that they are monitoring. So police channel, the fire channel, we actually have a Western Mass law enforcement channel that is all the surrounding areas. So it's a interop channel, let's say, that everyone can talk on if they needed to for, let's say a crime occurred in one agency and it's going to another agency. So Chicopee could be calling us because we have a vehicle pursuit heading our way. So we're listening at 3-4 radio channels at a time, as well as a caller. So that multitasking is very hard to do, and it is very hard to learn. So as well as multitasking as in tasks, so typing something while you're also asking questions and giving instructions to a caller. So that all comes along with prioritizing too. What should I answer first? Should I answer the radio? Should I answer this incoming phone call? And communication skill, it's in our job title. We are a telecommunicator. So yes, we have to be able to communicate effectively. We have to communicate with our partner. So there are so many skills that I look for when I'm hiring. And I tend to, when I'm out in the world, tend to look at people who are working at, let's say, Dunkin' Donuts or McDonald's, or if I'm at a restaurant, and those service jobs seem to bring me the best multitasking person, because they're doing almost exactly what we're doing, except they're handling coffee orders simultaneously while we're handling emergency calls. So I can teach people what to send to what type of emergency, but I can't really teach them or teach their brain how to multitask and prioritize certain things.
I think that's an interesting point because honestly, I'm thinking, in my mind, until you just started talking, I'm thinking, okay, a single call comes in. Hello, I have a medical emergency. Okay, we'll help you with that. And then you get done with that. Oh, here's another call that comes in. I have a police emergency. You don't realize, to your point, that you're listening to multiple tones going on, that there's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff can be happening at the same time. And so and you've only got one person out there at a time, correct?
No, so there's two.
Oh, there's two.
I
Okay.
have a minimum of two, but there are dispatch centers around here like East Hampton, Southwick. Southampton. They only have one dispatcher on because their call volume doesn't dictate that they need more than that staffing their dispatcher.
Right.
Now, obviously, there's always going to be an instance where it becomes very busy very quickly. But unfortunately, they will have to handle that by themselves. So, I mean, I would say that our center is set up in a way that with two dispatchers sitting there, that means that there's two sets of ears on everything going on. So there could be a time where one dispatcher is handling an emergency call and the other dispatcher is answering a police officer. And that's all happening, one after the other. But let's say a big storm rolls through, they're answering multiple calls at the same time. Both of them are. And not only having to deal with the radio and the phones, again, like I said, they have to communicate with their partner. So they have to know what their partner is also handling so they don't duplicate things, so they don't miss anything, that we're not sending one police officer to two different locations because we didn't hear each other. So
Oh,
there's a
wow.
lot going on in the dispatch center. So there's a lot of skills. There are a lot of skills that I look for in somebody when I hire and I'm looking for a really good dispatcher.
So clearly, when we take it for granted that we see a police car show up at an accident or a fire truck show up in a fire or an ambulance show up where they're going, we just take it for granted. Oh yeah, they got to where they were going, but
Hey,
there's a
they knew
lot
where to
that's
go.
behind the scenes and to your point, to
Yeah,
make sure that you're getting them to the right place and they're not.
yes.
If you have two like you said, a snowstorm come, like what we had the other day was this icing that happened where a
Yeah.
flash freeze occurred about 8 o'clock when the school buses were all going out.
Yes.
There were cars even in front of our road. Cars are going off the road, and I think there was probably multiple accidents as a result of it because you just lose total control, and it happens so quickly.
Yes.
And now you've got all those calls coming in, and you've got to keep track of, okay, which one are we? Plus, you've got multiple people calling on the same thing, so you've got to discern:
Absolutely.
is this the same thing that we just heard from?
You're
How do
absolutely
you differentiate some of those?
So it's funny. I'll this ice storm that you that you just brought up. I was coming into work and I was stuck in the middle of it because it started raining and then all of a sudden flash froze. So I knew the dispatch center would be busy, but I texted the dispatchers on duty to say, I know that you're busy, but I'm coming in to help answer phones if you need. And I just got back, yes, very busy. So I knew I had to get in quick. So I did my best to safely come in. And once I did come in, it was like a walk in the door. I dropped my bags and I had to go right to the console because 911 was ringing off the hook. We had officers calling out at certain things. We even had an ambulance stuck getting to an emergency call. They
Oh,
got
wow.
stuck. We ended up having to send a second ambulance to try to make their way to the emergency call. So all of these things are happening, and I walked in right in the middle of it. So I sat down and went, okay, get your head in the game. So I quickly had to look to see what was on the board and see where we were sending people because I knew the next 911 call I picked up could be a duplicate. So we do have a computer system which is called a computer aided dispatch system where anytime we receive a call for service, we enter it into that CAD, into the computer system that shows us exactly where it is, what is happening, and who we're sending to it. So it keeps track of our responders, it keeps track of where we're going and what we're going to. So if I see that and I know that I'm taking a 911 call for the same exact thing, and of course I ask some clarifying questions to make sure that it isn't a second emergency at the same location. That if I know what we've already sent, then I will tell the caller, thank you, we've already received a call, they're on their way, or are just arrived, or they're already there. So that's how we can determine. We keep track of everything. And another job responsibility I didn't even mention in the beginning is that we have the really important job of documenting everything. So again, we document where and what times our responders go to things, what they've done on scene, if they've asked us to document that. We're the one to assign report numbers to things, EMS numbers if it's an ambulance call. So the dispatchers are very good at documenting things very specifically, so we know exactly what happened and when.
Absolutely fascinating. I will tell you, I bow down to those dispatchers you have working for you, because that is really a far more complex and stressful job than I ever anticipated. I'm guessing that our viewers will get that feeling as well. So
Yes.
I have to ask you, I mean, and you've answered some of this, because I don't know if, do you go to school to become a dispatcher, or is it just raw
That's a
skills
great
that you
question.
bring to the job?
Yeah. So no, I actually started dispatching 15 years ago. And I was I was a waitress and bartender, and someone did exactly what I do. And they said to me, you'd make a great dispatcher. And I said, I have no idea what a dispatcher is or what they do. I was very young. I was 20 years old at the time. And he said, and so he kind of went over the job, and I was like, wow, that sounds really exciting. That sounds like an actual career that I would like to get into. And so when I applied and I got the job, I started training, and I remember when I applied, I was like, there's no way that they're going to take me. I have no experience in this. I've never even talked to a police officer. I'm almost intimidated that I'm going into this field. Why would they want me? And I quickly learned that, we're not looking for experience, because we can give you that experience once you're trained. And so what we focus on is, before we put a dispatcher on the console and that they are alone handling and making these decisions for these emergency situations, we train them very much. So these professionals are highly trained in my center, and it is different across a lot of centers in the state and the nation. But in my center, it's about 4 months of training before they're even put alone, having to deal with these situations by themselves on a console. Well, of course, with their partner, but really they are alone. They don't have someone to notice a mistake if they're making one. So they have to be trained, and they have to have confidence in themselves that they can do this once they're off of training. So training consists of a lot of book training in the beginning. We give them all their background information to Westfield Police Department, Westfield Fire Department, things like chain of command, what our resources are, let's say what type of equipment the fire department has in case we receive a call for something and we're like, we should send the boat to that call. So we go over all of that stuff. Then they have requirements that they have to have through the state of Massachusetts in order to become a certified telecommunicator, which is, we have to have a basic telecommunication course. That's 40 hours that they have to go to. They have to take the 911 equipment course to learn how to use the 911 phone. Really, it's a computer system. They also have to have CPR, and they have to have EMD, which is emergency medical dispatch. That's the protocol that I was telling you about that we had to be certified in, to do the standardized questioning instructions for medical calls. So there's requirements that we have to uphold each year, even after they are on their own and they're off of training. Each year, a dispatcher has to have 16 hours of continuing education, whether that's like a suicide intervention course or domestic violence course. So they constantly have to learn and also recertify themselves in this whole career. So it could be any type of topic that dispatch could have involvement in. We are learning about that. So there's a lot of learning. There's a lot of continuing learning. After they go through their certification courses and they do a lot of their book training, then they sit with one of our trainers, who is one of our full-time dispatchers, and they go through everything that there is on the console. They go through the radios, they go through their CAD system, which is the computer aided dispatch, again, 911, all the other computer stuff that we have. They learn how to use it. They learn how to talk on the radio. And then they learn how to answer a 911 call and how to call take, so how to ask certain questions. Because even though we are getting certified for, say, medical calls, and it gives us a script on what to ask, Police calls are very different. So we have to know what to ask. So we train our new people on that. And then once they've kind of learned everything that we're going to teach them, they have to practice it. So that's why training takes so long. And then even after, when they're released from training, they're still going to be learning. They're still going to be gaining their experience. So I wouldn't even say that a dispatcher is seasoned until about 2 years on the job. I would say after 2 years, I know that it was at least a year and a half for me where I felt like the job just clicked. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I've got this. I have confidence in myself. And I think that no matter what comes my way, I can handle it.
Fascinating. I have to ask you, is there burnout? Do you have high turnover? It sounds like it probably is. It's stressful.
So I would say that we do have a high turnover, just in compared to another job, let's say, because it is very stressful. The dispatchers hear trauma every day. They hear sadness every day. I mean, there's a lot of things that are just kind of routine, like someone's asking, if they can burn their brush pile, stuff like that isn't going to really wear on us. But a baby not breathing, that's a pretty traumatic call to take. So all these little things, even though you might be able to talk about it and you feel better about it afterwards, they still start to compound on each other. So I would say that we do start to see burnout with full-time dispatchers anywhere around the 5-year mark,
Mm.
is when they start really thinking, I like this job, but I just don't know if I can handle it for much longer, because not only is the job itself stressful, but the schedule is really stressful. I mean, we are a 365 days a year we're working. We are in here 24 hours a day. No matter if it's Christmas morning we're missing with our children, we are here to answer that call. So the schedule can burn out somebody very easily. You could be sitting here working your midnight shift and it's, let's say, 4 a.m. and the person who's supposed to relieve you at 8 a.m. is calling off sick because COVID, the flu, anything it could be. And now you realize you're going to be staying until 4 p.m. So
Wow.
there's a lot that adds to a dispatcher's burnout. And I would say one of my roles and responsibilities inside the center is to make sure that it doesn't happen as quickly as it possibly can to each dispatcher. I give them, as much support as they need. They know they can always come in here and vent. We do have some crisis teams that will come in after a big event that could be traumatic to talk over with them. So yeah, I mean, there's plans in place, but yeah, burnout is a real thing. And I would say let's say I'm losing a dispatcher once they hit their 5-year mark, I feel like with 10 employees and that's scattered, I feel like I'm always hiring and training at some point. But it's not just
Right.
Westfield, it's a lot of other agencies as well. And I know the police departments and fire departments deal with the same type of turnover.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you what, I am developing a brand new respect for your team. I'm
Thank
learning
you.
so much, and I'm sure our viewers are as well.
Thank
So
you.
let's get into the actual emergency process. So we're talking about 911. What does that mean? How does it work? And when should people access it?
Absolutely. So 911 should only be utilized in a life and death emergency. Um, but I do want to say as well, if you're feeling hesitant about calling 911, I would say err on the side of caution and call. 911 always has the slogan of you see something, say something. And that's really true. If you're seeing a crime happening or it's just happened, call 911 and we'll send a police officer. If there is, I mean, I know a lot of, especially older adults, if they start feeling strange, let's say, or they start feeling like they have indigestion or they have a really bad headache and they're feeling like that's just not them. I don't know if I should call 911. It's kind of getting late to call my primary care. Call 911. I mean, that's what we're here for. We're sitting here waiting for that call because we want to make sure that everyone is safe and sound. So the way 911 works is if you dial 911 on your phone, whether it's a landline or you're on a cell phone in Westfield, it's going to come to my dispatch center. If you're in Southampton, the same thing. So if you're calling from your Southampton home or business, or you're calling, from a cell phone in Southampton, it's going to go to Southampton. It's a thing called geofencing. It's really it's a lot of technicality stuff. I don't need to go into it all, but the phone companies will pick up on your cell phone exactly where you are using latitude and longitude, and it will send it to the proper jurisdiction. So if you're calling, like I said, if you're calling from Westfield, it will come to Westfield Dispatch. And again, we will go through this the whole series of questions, because the way we know how to send the correct help is to ask the right questions. So if you have an emergency, no matter what it is, and you're calling, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to answer with 911. This line is recorded. What is the address of your emergency? And we want people to give their address right away, because like I said, if you're on a cell phone and you have bad service, or you're in the middle of a storm and your phone gets disconnected, we want to know where you are. So even if it's your house is on fire, or you're seeing a crime that's being committed, or someone is laying motionless on the floor, we still need your address. And the reason why we ask all the questions we ask is because we want to be able to help you before help arrives, and we want to make sure that the right help gets to you. So when you call 911 and you give your address, the next thing we're going to say is, tell me exactly what happened. And then you're going to go into, you're going to tell us what is happening right now. Now, if you start giving us a long backstory about, well, last week, we might say, okay, but what's happening right now? Because we want to figure out if it's something that we have to send to right away, or if we do have time to listen to your backstory. And I think it's important to know, and have your viewers know, that when you call 911, we aren't delaying sending a response to you just because we're asking the questions. We're asking the questions because we're curious and we care for you, and we want to make sure that we get the right help out to you. So if you don't answer our questions, we might have to send everybody, because we just don't know what's going on and we want to be safe. And also, it feels like it's a really long time when you're on the phone with us. But it's also important to know that really the average 911 call only lasts about 3 minutes. If we stay on the line with a caller, it will last until help arrives, which could be up to 10 minutes. But really, it seems like, we have a lot of callers say, just get here. Why do you keep asking me all these questions? Just get here. And we'll say, ma'am or sir, the questions that we're asking are not delaying our response at all. They are already on their way. We're going to stay on the phone with you, because if something changes, we want to be able to tell you exactly what to do.
Great points. I want to follow up on a couple of those. First one, so a lot of people go on vacation to the Cape. So we all take our cell phone. If I'm on the Cape, I just want to follow up on this geo thing you were mentioning. If I'm in Brewster on the Cape and I see something happen and I need help, I dial 911. Is phone the phone is figuring out where you are, and it's going to send me to the Brewster dispatch?
Yes, you're absolutely right. Yep. So if you're calling from a cell phone, your cell phone uses technology which shows exactly where you're located using latitude and longitude, and it's going to send it to the proper jurisdiction for the emergency services. So if you're driving on the Massachusetts Turnpike going from Lee to Westfield, no matter where you are, if you call 911, it's going to get to the proper the proper dispatch center. I mean, there are exceptions. So sometimes if our technology just isn't working as it should, you might hit a cell tower that is just outside of the jurisdiction. But as soon as that 911 dispatcher answers your phone and says, tell me exactly where you are, and you say, I'm in Westfield on the Pike, they might say, okay, hang on the line, I'm going to transfer you to Westfield. So even if it happens to hit the wrong dispatch center, which it does on a very small percentage of time, we know to transfer to the proper authorities.
Yes, okay. I think that's a great point that people need to realize, because sometimes they think that, well, my phone is from Westfield, so it's just all the calls are automatically going to go to Westfield. Great point. The other question I was thinking about as you were talking about this is response time. You mentioned that. Now, Westfield, we're like the second, maybe the third largest city in Massachusetts land-wise, not population, but land-wise. I think we're 47 square miles. That's a big area to cover. We have one police station on Washington.
Yeah.
And then we have several, how many? We have the main fire station on Broad, and
Yep.
then there's substations. How many substations are there?
We have two substations. We have one on the south side of the city and we have one on the north side of the city. So Station 3 is on the north side, and that's right on Southampton Road. And then Station 2 is on Little River Road. So we particularly have them so that we have one centralized, which is headquarters, and then the two substations, so that if there's an emergency happening on the north side of the city, that it's not going to take long for someone to reach you. Now, again, we could be having those, let's say the fire apparatus or the ambulance coming from downtown, even though they're supposed to be stationed at at the north side of the city, because if we send to one emergency and we're already out of that ambulance, we'll just have to send the backup. But I would say that with lights and sirens, our emergency responders can reach an address within 10 minutes. I mean, if it's bad weather, of course, it's going to be a little bit longer. But I would say 10 minutes is usually the longest response time that we have.
Okay. But I think it's good for our viewers to realize that there are ambulances positioned on either side of, really in three different locations
Yes.
geographically, so that we've really got good coverage within
Yep.
the city. And then the police are already patrolling their, I don't know
That's
if
right.
they call them districts or what they call them, but I always see them. I live up on the north side, so I see police cars up here all the time, and I see them downtown when I'm there. So there's coverage going on everywhere. So really,
That's right.
it's certainly 10 minutes, but I'm guessing even less than that in many cases,
Yes.
depending on what's going on.
Yep, you're right.
So when responders come, do they come fully prepared for all kinds of emergencies, or are they determining what to bring based on what your dispatchers are telling them?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So they try to come prepared for every emergency situation that we could have. But and they do that with training, and they do that with making sure that they do have the equipment that they could possibly use in a day inside their vehicles. So I would say 95% of the calls that our responders get called to, yes, they absolutely come prepared. But of course, there's going to be something that they weren't that they can't carry in their vehicles, let's say. So if it's an emergency that is requiring specialized equipment or specialized training, then they know that they have particular resources outside of the city they can call to. So we utilize the state police for certain crime teams, or we also can utilize other fire departments if they have a piece of equipment that we would need and we don't have, and we can call them in. So I would say all in all, yes, we come prepared, because we know that if we don't have something, we can readily access it.
Yeah, fascinating. So, we hear these things, like there's commercials right now on television. You've probably seen them, where there's a guy on a stand-up paddleboard, and he's getting blown out in the ocean, and he's calling in on his Apple. It's an Apple Watch
Yeah.
commercial. And then there's a woman who's upside down in the car in rising water. I'm curious, what is the relationship that develops, and how does a dispatcher know when to stay on the line, when to leave the line, say, hey, we've got help coming, just be patient? What is that relationship like, and how does that work out?
Yep. So the dispatcher is the first point of contact. So everyone's heard of a first responder, that our police officers and our firefighters and paramedics are our first responders, but the dispatcher is the first responder. So we are the person that they are going to talk to first in their emergencies. So the relationships becomes very bonded at some point, because when you're calling 911, it's not usually for a good situation. So you're relying on the person answering your call, that they are going to be compassionate. They're going to know exactly what to do. So the dispatcher will stay on the line anytime an emergency is unstable or worsening. So if it's a medical emergency and someone's complaining of let's say someone was working in a kitchen and they cut their hand. As long as the bleeding is controlled and the person isn't having any difficulty breathing, or they're not going to faint or have shock symptoms. Let's say they have someone on scene to help them and wave down the paramedics. If we know help is probably going to be arriving within 10 minutes, we might say, are you okay to hang up the phone with us? If they say yes, then we'll disconnect. And we always give the instruction of call us back immediately if anything changes. And then we can give further instructions. Or if someone says, no, I would feel more comfortable staying on the line, we absolutely stay on the line with someone. We would never want to disconnect with somebody who's not feeling as though their situation is safe. So sometimes the dispatchers give the caller that decision, or sometimes we make that decision ourselves. But again, yeah, anytime a situation is unstable or worsening, we will always stay on the line. And the only time we break away from that rule is if it is an emergency situation inside the dispatch center where we're answering too many calls to keep up with. But even still, we try to get into the habit of saying, I'm going to place you on a brief hold. Don't hang up. I'll come right back. So we might have to place someone on hold just so we don't hang up with them and lose them ultimately. But yeah, that's the rule of thumb we stay by.
So I'm guessing you have to put them on thumb when you're then calling. So so you get that. So I call you in, I call in, I need I've got a brush fire that's out of control.
Yep.
And so I'm calling into you. Actually, that's not a good one. Let me back up. Let's say I've got a medical emergency. I was out using a chainsaw and I accidentally hit my leg and I've got a pretty serious gash. And I've got what I think is uncontrolled bleeding.
Sure.
So I call into you, your dispatcher automatically recognizes this is time sensitive because of bleeding. Are they going to then put me on hold so that they can now what do? They call the firehouse and they talk to them?
Yep, we use radio. So we do call them, but not over a phone. We call them over a radio. So
okay.
The radio is a quick way to access them, to communicate with them, tell them exactly what's happening on scene and where to go. So if we have a caller on the line, we won't put someone on hold in order to do that. Again, it comes back to our multitasking that we have to do two things at once. Or if the second dispatcher sitting in the room doesn't have any, they're not doing anything that they need to prioritize, they would then dispatch for the dispatcher who's on the phone. So we could have one dispatcher talking to a caller, helping them control their bleeding, finding out exactly where they are. And the second dispatcher would be dispatching the responders out to the scene.
So that's where the teamwork comes in.
Absolutely.
So are they sitting right next to each other?
They are, yep, 6 feet away.
Wow.
Thankfully.
Yeah, thankfully is right. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I am so impressed with what is going on in your office. I really do want to come and visit just
Absolutely,
to watch it.
I would welcome it.
I'm really, really fascinated. So, as you said, the dispatchers are really trained in what kind of questions to ask. What happens with language differences, Spanish or Russian or those kinds of things?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we do have a big population of Russian speaking people within Westfield. So we do have to utilize an interpreter, and the state has actually secured an interpretive services for 911 purposes. So anytime we're on 911 and we know that someone speaks a different language other than English, we don't try to have them conform to English. If the dispatcher can't speak that language, they will automatically say, as best they can, if the person will even understand, stay on the line a moment. And then we get the interpreter service on there. We might say Russian, and then they will say, hang on. And probably within a minute, we will have a Russian interpreter on the line. Or if we can say, we say Spanish, and they will find a Spanish interpreter. Or we could say, I don't know what language they speak. If they can't even tell us to answer us, what they'll do is they will do a best guess, and they'll get an interpreter on the line, start speaking with somebody, and that interpreter will say, no, it's not this language. I think it's, I think it's Cambodian. And then they'll keep going through their list until they've gotten an interpreter on the line that someone could talk to.
Fascinating. That is absolutely fascinating. I mean, again, you don't even think about these things until we start talking. I
There
realize
you go.
how
The answers. Are we prepared for all emergencies? Yes, mostly. We
yeah.
are.
Oh, absolutely. There is no question about it. So let's talk quickly, and then we're going to do a trial 911 so we can see actually how this whole thing works. It's really been fascinating. What kinds of things can the public do to prepare themselves in case they ever need responders coming in? I know there's several things that are in place and
Yes.
things that really create problems for the responders if they're coming into a home or to an
Of course.
apartment.
Yep. So big visible house numbers, that's really important to, if your house isn't right on a street, and let's say if you only have a mailbox and you have a really long driveway, on your mailbox, it should be a really big visible house number. So that's what the responders are going to be looking for. Tina, the director of council on aging, also wanted to make sure that people know that some of these things are available at the senior center if you just ask her. So even reflective, I would say for the dark hours, reflective house numbers on either your house or your mailbox. That's extremely helpful. Other things are file of life cards, which you can place on your refrigerator. So if something were to happen in your home and you weren't able to tell the responders what types of medications or who to contact, they would be looking for that on the refrigerator. And again, that's at the senior center too, if anyone needs that.
I
Uh,
want to, before you leave that one, I want to hit on that one because I did another interview and it may have been with the fire department. I'm trying to remember now. Um, and we talked about that, what's it called? The file of life card.
yeah.
And I was fascinated with that. So people need to know that that is really important. And again, they can get that at the Westfield Senior Center through Tina Gorman's with her staff. But that will give, if I recall correctly, that's phone numbers, next of kin,
Yep.
emergency contacts, blood
Yep.
types,
And I know that.
medications.
Yep, absolutely. And I know that that there are some people that will even add either next to it or inside of it, anything else that we should know. So anything that you feel as though is relevant, like I have a cat that I keep up in the upstairs bedroom, that might be a good idea, that if we know if we're transporting someone to the hospital and they may be there for a couple of days, that we can let animal control know that they have an animal that needs to be
Right.
cared for. Yeah.
Wow. That's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
That's
And then
great.
some other things that need to be done to make sure that it's possible for the responders to get there safely and get in there quickly for an emergency situation is to make sure that pathways are clear of any type of clutter inside the house and also outside of the house too. So especially during the winter season when there's a lot of snow out there, it's not always possible that people can get out there quickly to shovel. But if you're not able to shovel yourself, have someone do that for you, whether it's someone that you hire or if it's a friend's relative neighbor that can come over and shovel your sidewalk, so that if an ambulance has to come with their stretcher to get someone outside of the home, they can do that easily.
Yeah, really, really important points. And also, I think it probably, some people have dogs as protectors. Some dogs are very sweet, other dogs are very aggressive. Is that a question that you ask, or how do responders handle the issue
Yeah,
of dogs?
actually. So especially in a medical emergency, one of our instructions that we always say at the end is if you have any pets, put them away. So obviously if you're home alone and you've fallen and you can't get up, we know that you won't be able to put your animals away. But we will tell the responders that so that they can anticipate that there might be a dog at the door. But otherwise, if you are able to be up and about, and you do have animals that could either scurry out the door, because we also don't want to leave your house with an animal that's outside and they shouldn't be. So we will instruct someone to put any type of animals away that might be able to get out or might be a harm to the responders or anybody else.
Yeah, fascinating. I have to ask the question before we try the 911. Have you seen it all, or are there still surprises that come in? They get called
I
in.
feel like so I don't answer 911 very often anymore because I'm now the director here, but I will say that 15 years in this job, I feel like sometimes when I answer the call, I'm like, no, okay, that's it. I've got it. Now I've heard everything. And until the next time when I thought I've heard everything and something else were to come up. I mean, we get a wide variety of phone calls for emergencies and non-emergencies. And and I'm glad that people feel confident in us enough in us to tell us a lot of their backstories and a lot of their histories, and feel comfortable, explaining some emergencies that might be embarrassing. But yeah, we hear a lot of things, and the dispatchers are so good and so professional at making sure that everyone is feeling like it's not an embarrassment. I know that a lot of older adults feel like when they call, that they might say to us, "Can you tell them not to turn their lights and sirens on? I don't want my neighbors knowing." But we always say, let them. You're calling 911 and they're here to help you. Let them go with lights and sirens if they feel as though it's important enough, and we know that what you're calling isn't important enough. We want to go there fast. So let them go with lights and sirens because you are that important.
That's a good point. So let's see what happens with 911. How does that work?
So, like I said, with calling 911, it's going to go to, if you're in Westfield, it's going to go to the Westfield Dispatch Center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate a text to 911. So the slogan in the state of Massachusetts, we just recently started receiving text to 911s, is the slogan is call if you can, text if you can't. And the reason why they did that is because they realized that there's a population of people who might be deaf or hard of hearing that use TTY phones for landlines. But nowadays with cell phones that you can bring it anywhere, you're not tied to a landline with a TTY. So if you can't talk to someone and hear what they're saying, then you can easily text somebody. Why shouldn't you be able to do that on 911? So if you have an emergency, you should be able to reach 911, whether it's a call or a text. There also could be other emergency situations that make you unsafe to be talking audibly to a 911 dispatcher. So we do have some procedures in place if someone were to call and they're staying silent on the line. But again, text to 911 is always a possibility that could keep you safe. So if you feel as though someone came into your house and that you want to hide and you don't want them to know that you're there, you could be hiding and texting 911 and letting us know, and it's quiet. So I'm going to switch my camera around so that you can see my phone, and I'm going to place it in front. Let's see. Okay, so they are prepared out there. All right. So can you see this okay?
Yes.
All right.
Yep. It's perfect.
So what we're going to do is in the to line, we're going to text 911. And I'm going to start this out with saying, this is a test to Westfield. And then I'm going to say, let's say I need the fire department. So now so I just heard the ding go off and it says 911, this session is recorded. What is the address in town of your emergency? So they already know it's Westfield. I already told them it was a test. It is my dispatcher's answering right now. And I'm going to say 123 Main Street. So there is a bit of a delay, but the dispatcher does have to read it and they do have to type. I'm going to say it's a single family house. And then I'm just going to get right into it and say my fire alarm system is flashing. Now, again, we have to realize that if we're calling 911, this is going to be much quicker.
Right.
So,
yeah, calling is obviously immediate.
Yep, and that is why the state 911 has given the slogan of call if you can, text if you can't. Not that I can see.
This is fascinating. really, this is great to see what your capability is. And again, I'm starting to understand because help is on the way. Um, they're receiving a text. They can't even elaborate with the person that's calling in at this point. And so they're really having to, in their own mind, kind of, it's almost like triage, figuring out or just figure out, okay, how serious, what is it, how immediate, how large. There's
right.
a lot of things that have to be going on in their mind when they're getting this.
Yes, absolutely. So as you can see, we always say there's a key word in there that I totally picked up on that the dispatchers will always say, and it's if it's safe to do so. And the reason why we say that is because we don't have eyes on scene. So we can't tell that, let's say if there was a
Right.
fire in the house and we're telling you to get out, we do want you to get out of a burning house. But let's say all of your exits are being blocked by flame. We only say if it's safe to do so because we don't want someone running through a wall of fire to try to get out of the exit. We would then instruct them to either go into a room, put some wet towels underneath the door, maybe open a window if they're on the first floor, maybe even if they're on the second floor, can get to the roof of a garage that's not on fire. So I'm going to switch my camera back around. So typically when they release that text message, what happens is it says that actually it did. It said, if anything changes, please text 911 again, disconnecting. And then I will get a message once they finally release that call that it says your 911 text message has been disconnected. Please call or text again if you need to. It's a formalized thing saying this is cut off. So that's how text works. So again, if I was reporting that and I was a hard of hearing or a deaf person, to me, that's a much easier way. 911 got my emergency and I didn't need to try to hear them. I didn't need to go through an interpreter service. So text to 911 is extremely helpful in emergency situations. And down the road, at some point, there's going to be an opportunity for people to be able to send in pictures and videos as well, which actually adds a whole different level of service that the dispatchers are going to have to deal with, because now we're so used to dealing with emergencies that we don't have to see. Now we're probably going to have to see them.
Interesting. So with the text thing, so like in that scenario, they have now dispatched police to that, a fire to that address. Yep. Do they do any further follow-up, or do they assume that that's it and they're now out of it and they're just on to the next call?
Yeah, well, so they are for the call taking purposes, but they're still documenting. They're still talking to the responders. I would say at this point, if this were a real emergency, they've already dispatched the fire engine. The fire engine's probably getting right out of the bays of the firehouse, and they're calling on the air to let the dispatchers know that they're on their way. So the dispatchers would receive them. Then they would receive the responders once they arrive on scene. And then once they've done their investigation, they've done everything they need to do on scene, they'll tell the dispatchers that they're clear and back in service. So we know that we can use them for the next emergency going on. So the dispatchers have to listen to the radio and know exactly when and where their responders are at all times. So again, for the call, yes, we're done with the caller, and but we're still dealing with the responders who are on scene there.
Are you hearing all the fire traffic on the radio and all police traffic on the radio?
Yep,
and so, and then there's got to be, more than one call going on at a time. So they're trying to differentiate. Wait a minute, which one am I listening to? Or
so they have to know which fire apparatus is at what address, and we have to know what police officer is at what scene. And so that when they call in, we know exactly who we're clearing from what, so that we're not confused.
Nina, I have to tell you that this has got to be one of the most unsung, under-recognized departments in the city. I am so impressed with what I have heard.
Thank you.
Today, listening to this, far more expansive than I was anticipating. I didn't know what I was getting into with the interview, and it has just been
I could talk
absolutely
for hours,
fantastic.
Harry.
Yeah, no, but I admire your passion for what you're doing, and obviously you really know your work. So it's hard to believe that this once in a life, long ago waitress is doing what you're doing now, and to think about those. And to your point, those are the basic skills that you're looking for: is that ability to work under pressure. Airline attendants, same kind of
Yes.
thing. Flights are canceled, flights are delayed. They're under. People that can handle animosity
Yes.
and heightened emotional situations. That's a rare commodity and really important. So you know what? I think we are blessed within the city of Westfield to have you as are you and I'm not sure I even have the right title. Is it director, administrator?
So it's really one and the same. My official title I go by is the dispatch administrator, but I am the director. I am the director of the department here. So yes, you've got it correct.
Yeah, but as I listen to you and I listen to the team of dispatchers that you have working under you, I think here in Westfield we can feel very assured that when the time comes and we need to access it, to your point, don't be afraid to call 911 and know that you're going to get the best help and the right help in the quickest amount of time possible.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Well, Nina Barsh, I just want to thank you so much. Again, the director and administrator of dispatch for Westfield Public Safety. Has been a fascinating interview, and want to thank you for the work that you're doing because it is so important and again highly under recognized. It's just incredible, but I've learned an awful lot, and I hope that our viewers really have gotten a lot out of this interview as well. So I want to say special thanks to Pete Coles, our WCPC Westfield Cable Channel 15 manager. He's in the background listening. Pete himself is a former dispatcher for Westfield and has been in this field in other places as well. But Pete, thanks you for all your help and support for making this show possible. And on behalf of Pete Coles, Tina Gorman, I am Harry Rock, and you've been listening to another exciting edition of the Westfield Council on Aging presents on WCPC Westfield Cable Channel 15. Thanks, and we'll see you on the next show.